Chapter 851, Land Spirits Master, Second Blessed Land. Chapter 851, Land Spirits Master, Second Blessed Land. After obtaining the severed arm, Fang Yuan carefully kept it in his immortal aperture. Soon after, he cleaned up the area and removed all his traces. Returning to Hu immortal blessed land, he did not rest. He started working on the severed arm, spending 4 days and 3 nights to turn it into Song Zixing's head. Next, he used fixed immortal travel and went to Earth Abyss, star form land spirit. I brought Song Zixing's head. In the eerie and dark underground world, he shouted that a speck of starlight first appeared, before light burst out like water from a fountain. A breath of time later, a huge squarish door made of starlight appeared. The half-transparent door was floating in the air. At the top, there were 4 words written on the plaque, Star Form Blessed Land. Fang Yuan squinted as he looked at it. Ordinary blessed lands and grotto heavens had entrances, because the entrance represented interaction, and with interaction, they could take in heaven and earth chi to strengthen the small world. Thus, infallible blessed land was very unique. Because it did not have entrances, it was a very strange exception. As Fang Yuan waited, a small slit opened in the starlight door. It's you? You really brought Song Zixing's head. A voice came from behind the slit. Star form land spirit did not appear. He was quite wary. Fang Yuan chuckled as he tossed the head over. Actions speak louder than words. The slit opened a bit more. A suction force moved the head over to it. It really is Song Zixing's head. A joyful and surprised voice came from behind the door. Boom! The door opened completely. Starlight opened up a path for Fang Yuan. As star form land spirit stood at the door, saying to Fang Yuan with cheerful submission, Star form land spirit greets master. Fang Yuan nodded. His expression was calm. He took huge steps and walked onto the starlight path, entering into star form blessed land. The moment he stepped in, starlight overwhelmed Fang Yuan's vision. But in the blink of an eye, the starlight faded, and star form blessed land's unique terrain appeared before him. The whole of star form blessed land resembled a giant bowl. Like a bowl, the edges were interconnected mountain ranges. They formed a tight circle that resembled city walls, and within the bowl, they were slanted slopes that converged towards the center. Darkness enshrouded this world. Fang Yuan raised his head and looked at the sky. There was nearly complete darkness. Only a few starlight specks were shining weakly in the sky. Like how Hu immortal blessed land only had days without nights, star form blessed land only had nights without days. Normally, blessed lands would not have changes between day and night. Only after becoming a grotto heaven or becoming close to a grotto heaven would they start having such transformations between night and day. This was not the first time Fang Yuan was here. In fact, he was the one who placed down this blessed land. Last time, the stars were shining in the sky. It was very bright and dazzling. The ground was very bright due to all of the starlight. But now, it was quite dim. It showed that star form land spirit was not having an easy time managing the place. This was to be expected. Without a Gu immortal, the blessed land could not produce immortal essence. The land spirit and the blessed land were interlinked. It had to protect itself and manage the blessed land. But how could land spirits have the strength and wisdom of Gu immortals? Thus, most land spirits would find a master to help themselves. Survival was the most basic instinct in all living beings. The only difference was the difficulty in getting the land spirit to acknowledge a new master. Fang Yuan's gaze swept across the area before it landed on star form land spirit. Bring me around to inspect the blessed land. Fang Yuan ordered. Star form land spirit looked like a little boy. He was floating in the air. He was wearing pinkish-blue clothes wrapped around his chest and stomach. His small arms and legs were tender white like lotus roots, looking delicate like jade. He appeared very cute. After acknowledging Fang Yuan, star form land spirit looked towards Fang Yuan with a clear gaze filled with admiration and warmth. Hearing Fang Yuan's words, star form land spirit nodded. Master, follow me. This attitude was completely the opposite of previously. A lump of starlight gathered on Fang Yuan as his body flew up rapidly. This speed was extremely fast. Even Song Zixing's blood rainbow flash could not match it. Fang Yuan felt his vision blurring. All he saw was starlight around him. He could only catch occasional fuzzy images from the quickly moving scenery. The starlight stopped moving, and the scene in his vision had already changed. Master, you are at the southeast side of the blessed land now. This is the arrow bamboo forest, the biggest plantation area in the entire blessed land. Star form land spirit introduced. Fang Yuan looked over, only to see that this arrow bamboo forest was huge. It extended beyond Fang Yuan's field of vision. The arrow bamboos were straight. They resembled green spear bamboo from Qingmao Mountain, but they were not jade in color. Instead, the bamboo shoots were black and did not have any leaves growing on them, only branches. At each segment of the arrow bamboo, there would be around 3 branches growing on it. These branches were sharp and long, resembling arrows. Below the arrow bamboo forest were large numbers of star cave rocks, countless dark fragrance mushrooms, and a field of white shadow grass. Fang Yuan nodded his head internally. The arrangement of this habitat could not be done any better. If I am not wrong, this should be the production area of star dart goo? Fang Yuan asked. Master is correct. Star form land spirit answered immediately. Star dart goo was a rank 1 mortal goo. It was transformed from ordinary insects. This was different from the production of starlight firefly goo. Starlight firefly goo were a part of the starlight firefly group, produced after they transformed and mutated. Star dart goo could be produced from any type of insect which entered deep sleep inside a star cave rock that was filled with holes on the surface. After a total of 49 days, a portion of the slumbering insects would undergo a change and become star dart goo. The food of star dart goo was the bamboo juice of the arrow bamboo forest. The arrow bamboo forest was hot and humid. The bamboos themselves would produce bamboo juice that dripped out. In the past, the bamboo juices produced would form into a thick blue fog. It was a top-quality place to raise star dart goo. Unfortunately, I have not obtained any good watering liquids. Thus it became like this. Star form land spirit said with a longing tone. It seems I have to buy moon well water in batches. Fang Yuan muttered. He was very knowledgeable. He knew what water the arrow bamboo forest needed. Master is knowledgeable. Star form land spirit added, his expression becoming excited. Even though Star Lord Wanxiang left behind quite a bit of immortal essence, there were few immortal essence stones. And because Star form land spirit was worrying over his finances, he could not buy goods from Treasure Yellow Heaven casually. Compared to watering the arrow bamboo forest, there were other areas which needed the financial support more urgently. Afterwards, under the guidance of the land spirit, Fang Yuan went to the north area of the blessed land, inspecting the meteorite pits. This was the place to raise stellar fire goo and produce falling meteor goo. Next, he went to the center of the blessed land. This was a lake with ripples and reflecting light. It was huge and was called Broken Star Lake. This was also the place to rear goo worms. It produced star river goo. Next, he went to several grassy fields. They were all full of star fragment grass, a vast number of them. They were planted on black soil. The blades of grass were plump and shiny. They were much higher in quality compared to the ones that were planted in Hu immortal blessed land. Arrow bamboo forest, meteorite pit, broken star lake, star fragment grass field. Fang Yuan floated in the air. Looking at the lake, he showed a satisfied expression. The 4 areas mentioned were Star Lord Wanxiang's for main sources of revenue. Star Lord Wanxiang was quite decent in his development. He mainly sold star dart goo, stellar fire goo, falling meteor goo, star river goo, and starlight firefly goo. While Fang Yuan was still searching desperately for 4 sources of revenue, he already had them. At the moment, Fang Yuan only had guts goo and regretful spider traits. The other 2, eerie fire dragon pythons and dragonfish, were still not sold in the market yet. Star Lord Wanxiang had rank 6 cultivation level with 1 heavenly tribulation passed. He was also a lone cultivator, but he was higher in cultivation level than Hu Immortal. According to his status and foundation, it would normally be impossible for him to develop his blessed land to this extent, but he had his fortuitous encounter. That was Starry Sky Grotto Heaven. The owner of Starry Sky Grotto Heaven, 7-star child, became an immortal zombie in order to prolong his life. While exploring star constellation Immortal Venerable's dream realm, he fell into deep slumber. Star-Lord Wanxiang had by chance discovered that starry sky grotto heaven connected to a spatial crack in the outside world of Central Continent. Every year, at a certain time, this crack would open. Thus, Star-Lord Wanxiang would go in every year to scavenge for resources to strengthen himself. Even though he had limited time on each occasion, he entered many times. Star-Lord Wanxiang thus had decent development. His immortal aperture was smoothly growing in value with each passing day. He surpassed most lone cultivator Gu immortals. Even Shirley praised his blessed land inwardly when he saw it. This Star-Lord Wanxiang's foundation was already on par with typical rank 6 Gu immortals in the 10 great ancient sections, but it was a pity that Star-Lord Wanxiang was heavily injured by Song Zixing, and because his tribulation was impending, he had to take a risk. He invited immortal Monkey King Shirley to explore Starry Sky Grotto Heaven. In the end, at the 8th Star Hall, he fell into star constellation Immortal Venerable's dream realm. His soul was destroyed, and only his body was left. Fang Yuan took the body and placed the blessed land in Earth Abyss. This led to the development of future events, like Star Form Land Spirit's requirement for becoming the new owner. With these 4 sources of revenue, my financial power will double. I will be swimming in profits. I will really be drowning in immortal essence stones. Fang Yuan was overjoyed. Star-Lord Wanxiang had operated his blessed land for a long time. He had already slotted himself into the market and had his own share of the economy in Treasure Yellow Heaven. Fang Yuan inherited his blessed land. He had also gotten over the difficult initial stage of entering the market. He took over Star-Lord Wanxiang's businesses directly. It saved him lots of trouble. Ordinary resources like Star Dart Goo and Stellar Fire Goo were usually sold in bulk quantities. They were very competitive in the market. It was not easy to carve out a share for oneself in the market. They would be collaborated against, facing price wars, or some Gu immortals might even threaten to kill them. As the saying goes, ruining a person's wealth is akin to killing their parents. The Gu immortal world was very cruel. If you want to do business, you need to show your strength. Without strength, no matter how flourishing your business was, you would get killed and plundered. Thus, Fang Yuan was always very careful with the dragonfish and eerie fire dragon pythons that he had. He wanted to make use of Shao Clan's transaction token to enter Western Desert's market. That could avoid much trouble and allow him to earn more profits. Of course, for monopoly businesses like Guts Goo, you could sell them as you wish. Others could not even compete in this. They could only watch and envy. After inspecting the blessed land, Fang Yuan was very pleased, but there was still something that he was highly anticipating. Land Spirit, bring me to see those immortal Gu in the blessed land. At the next moment, he instructed the Land Spirit. Chapter 852, 3 Immortal Gu, all are useful. The whole of Star Form Blessed Land was like a giant bowl, and its center was also the location which was at the bottom of the terrain. There was a lake here that spanned as far as the eye could see. Its name was Broken Star Lake. And the place where Star-Lord Wanxiang normally cultivated was also set at the bottom of Broken Star Lake. Reaching the bottom of the lake, Fang Yuan discovered a crystal palace. It was not large, and only had one main hall along with 2 normal halls. Star-Lord Wanxiang's immortal Gu were kept in the main hall. Under the guidance of Star Form Land Spirit, Fang Yuan smoothly entered the main hall. The moment he entered the main hall, he saw an immortal Gu flying around. This immortal Gu resembled a centipede. It was thin and long, like an arm, and black like iron. It was flying around in a zigzag fashion inside the main hall. The short horizontal segments on its body lit up like blue fireflies every now and then. This is a rank 6 immortal Gu, star mark. It can temporarily add 600 star path down marks onto Master's body. Star Form Land Spirit aptly introduced 600 down marks. Fang Yuan was startled. Even the strength path down marks on his body numbered no more than 200. This was the case after he had been using each strength immortal Gu recently to add over 40. However, this star mark immortal Gu could actually cause an increase of 600 star down marks at once. It could be said to be an outstanding ability. 200 down marks can increase power by 20%. 600 would mean a 60% increase. Unfortunately, they are star path down marks, and I am not a star path Gu immortal. There was no doubt this star mark immortal Gu was a high-quality support type immortal Gu. Fang Yuan was a strength path Gu immortal, and his body carried strength path Dao marks. But once he activated star mark immortal Gu, his body would be temporarily covered in a layer of star path Dao marks, letting him disguise himself as a star path Gu immortal. Besides star mark, there were two other immortal Gu in the main hall. Point one was like a prismatic crystal, the size of a fist. It was quietly lying on a desk, without any movement. Another was like a tender white bean sprout, filled with an air of vitality. Through star form land spirits introductions, Fang Yuan knew the crystal-like immortal Gu was starlight immortal Gu, while the bean sprout-like immortal Gu was known as star shoot. Fang Yuan could not help feeling joyous. Fortune had arrived. These two immortal Gu had much more use to Fang Yuan than star mark immortal Gu, because starlight mortal Gu was a necessary Gu. Material for the production of the wisdom path star thought Gu. Now that he had starlight immortal Gu, he could completely imitate the use of strength chi immortal Gu in refining air sac Gu to refine star thought Gu much faster and on a much larger scale. The starlight immortal Gu removed the troublesome step of purchasing starlight mortal Gu at the same time. With immortal Gu as the foundation, there would be a much lower failure probability in refining mortal star thought Gu. The risk involved would also be greatly mitigated, reducing the deaths of hairy men by a large degree. There were two issues created by this, however. The first problem was, to use starlight immortal Gu, Fang Yuan would have to modify the recipe of star thought Gu. The second issue was that using starlight immortal Gu would consume immortal essence. With wisdom Gu and the complete star thought Gu recipe, Fang Yuan would have no problems in modifying the Gu recipe. It was just a matter of time. As for the second issue, it would have indeed been a problem for Fang Yuan in the past. But now, Fang Yuan was star form blessed land's owner. He had 6 sources of revenue, and it would even increase to 8 in the future. His immortal essence stone earnings would quadruple. Such an amount of immortal essence stones made Fang Yuan have the confidence to spend immortal essence constantly in activating starlight immortal Gu. Starlight immortal Gu increased the accumulation of star thought Gu by a large extent, which was of enormous assistance. And star shoot immortal Gu was also very useful. Fang Yuan had once purchased a mortal killer move from Star Lord Wan Xiang, called Spring Star Rain. This move irrigated the land, providing nutrition to vegetation and increasing their productivity. Ever since he got this move, Fang Yuan had been using it again and again. The grassland in the sky of Hu immortal blessed land was able to maintain its current scale. It largely could be attributed to this mortal killer move. Frequent activation of Spring Star Rain consumed large numbers of Star Shoot mortal Gu. Star Shoot Gu were only sold by Star Lord Wan Xiang. Fang Yuan had once thought of freeing himself from Star Lord Wan Xiang's control by researching the refinement recipe of Star Shoot Gu. But even with Wisdom Gu's help, as Fang Yuan's star path attainment was only ordinary, he could not get what he wished at this point. Fang Yuan had Star Shoot immortal Gu, and from now on, he would be able to use Spring Star Rain to his heart's desire. He could also raise Spring Star Rain to the level of an immortal killer move and use Star Shoot immortal Gu as the core to further increase the yield of Star Fragment Grass. But Fang Yuan learned from Star Form Land Spirit. Star Lord Wan Xiang did possess the immortal killer move Spring Star Rain. In fact, the mortal killer move, Spring Star Rain, which Star Lord Wan Xiang sold, was a simplified version of his original Spring Star Rain. The Star Shoot Gu that Star Lord Wan Xiang sold were also refined by using Star Shoot immortal Gu. This was the reason why Fang Yuan found it difficult to reverse deduce the Gu recipe from Star Shoot Gu. The reason was that Star Lord Wan Xiang's Gu refinement method was done from top to bottom: Star Mark, Starlight, and Star Shoot. These 3 immortal Gu were all the immortal Gu left in the Blessed Land. Star Lord Wan Xiang had a total of 4 immortal Gu. Unfortunately, the 4th immortal Gu was destroyed in his battle with Song Zixing. Fang Yuan was thus able to obtain only 3. And he was already very satisfied with this. Generally speaking, in the entirety of the 5 regions, there were few rank 6 Gu immortals in possession of immortal Gu. Most of them were still using mortal Gu and mortal killer moves. Only the elites among rank 6 would be in possession of rank 6 immortal Gu. For instance, rank 6 Gu immortals of Central Continent's 10 great ancient sects, and another example would be lone cultivators like Star Lord Wan Xiang, who had fortuitous encounters. Northern Plains' situation, however, was special. Because of the collapse of 88 True Yang building, the rate of Gu immortals possessing immortal Gu far surpassed the other 4 regions. In fact, Central Continent was actually in last place among the 5 regions in regards to the ownership rate of immortal Gu. It couldn't be helped. They had the most Gu immortals after all. Fang Yuan's situation was even more special. Not counting these 3 immortal Gu, Fang Yuan already had 14 immortal Gu. No one would believe it if such a number was told to them. Not to mention, among these was rank 9 wisdom Gu. Generally, even if one killed an enemy Gu immortal, it was hard for them to get immortal Gu as spoils of battle. When Fang Yuan attacked Dong Fangchong Fan, he had a huge advantage and had captured even Dong Fangchong Fan's soul alive. But Dong Fangchong Fan had made all the immortal Gu self-detonate with a thought, and Fang Yuan could not even grasp even one of them. Star Lord Wanxiang was an exception, because he strayed into Star Constellation Immortal Venerable's dream realm. He died unexpectedly without making any reactions. Thus his immortal Gu were left behind and benefited Fang Yuan in the end. These 3 immortal Gu still had Star Lord Wanxiang's will, but with Star Form Land Spirit's assistance, it would not be a big problem to subdue them. Master, this is the immortal inheritance held in the blessed land. Please have a look. The land spirit handed an inheritance to Fang Yuan. It turned out that this was Star Lord Wanxiang's first fortuitous encounter. A Gu immortal inheritance regarding Star Path. It was this inheritance that guided the lone cultivator, Star Lord Wanxiang, on his path of cultivation to become a rank 6 Gu immortal. Star Lord Wanxiang's second fortuitous encounter was discovering the entrance of Starry Sky Grotto Heaven, from where he plundered many resources. His luck was actually quite good. Star Lord Wanxiang's main cultivation was Star Path, and Starry Sky Grotto Heaven was also a Star Path Grotto Heaven. Thus, they were both very compatible in terms of resources. Unlike Fang Yuan, who was a Strength Path Gu immortal, while who immortal Blessed Land was of Enslavement Path, and the Guts Gu produced by Dang Hun Mountain were of Soul Path. These multiple aspects were not too compatible with each other. Unfortunately, Star Lord Wanxiang still died in the end, and everything he had was now Fang Yuan's. Fang Yuan stayed for a whole day in Star Form Blessed Land. He inspected a small tribe of rockmen in the Blessed Land, as well as the 3 desolate beast-level spine-fin star dragonfish. While he was alive, Star Lord Wanxiang had used every possible effort to bring in this small group of rockmen. He did not have Guts Gu, and Star Form Blessed Land was also not a suitable environment for the survival of rockmen. As a result, many rockmen had died. It was not easy for him to maintain this small group. The 3 spine-fin star dragonfishes were captured from Starry Sky Grotto Heaven. There was no shortage of desolate beasts inside there. The reason he spent such large amounts of effort and capital was because Star Mark Immortal Gu's food was the fresh meat of spine-fin star dragonfish, and Starlight Immortal Gu fed upon the bodies of rockmen. As for Starshoot Immortal Gu, its food was large quantities of dark star kelps. This type of kelp grew in great amounts in Broken Star Lake. This was the orthodox situation of Gu immortals. Whatever path they cultivated, their immortal Gu would be of that path, and their immortal aperture would mostly have Dao marks of that path. In this way, they could bear the burden of feeding immortal Gu by raising the required food themselves. Unlike Fang Yuan, whose strength path immortal aperture was dead, who immortal blessed land was an enslavement path immortal aperture, and the immortal Gu on him were of strength path, wisdom path, soul path, luck path, and other various paths. He had to get help from the outside world to feed these immortal Gu. Every time, he had to rack his brains, and the situation was unstable. In fact, Clean's soul immortal Gu had yet to be fed properly to this day. Whether it was who immortal blessed land or his strength path immortal aperture, they both had sparse soul path down marks, and thus, even if he wanted to, it was not possible for Fang Yuan to raise White Lotus Giant Silkworm Gu becoming the owner of Star Form Blessed Land. Fang Yuan's strength had doubled. 3-star path immortal Gu. For economic pillars, a complete star path inheritance. Fang Yuan would need a lot of time to absorb them fully. He also made Star Form Land Spirit keep up the request of recognizing the Blessed Land's owner in Treasure Yellow Heaven. to fabricate an image of star-formed blessed land still not having an owner. And he also did not plan on telling the truth to He Lu Lan and Tai Bai Yunsheng for a while. The longer he could conceal it, the longer he would conceal it. Immortal blessed land was already exposed. Star-formed blessed land was also in a partially exposed state. But only He Lu Lan knew this location. If, in the future, he became a fugitive, this base would be extremely important. Regarding Dang Hun Mountain and the resources inside immortal blessed land, Fang Yuan did not plan to move them away for the moment. The resources had been arranged just recently, and large amounts of capital were invested. If he moved them to star-formed blessed land, with how astute He Lu Lan was, wouldn't she realize it? The following day, Fang Yuan went to participate in the Refinement Path Convention. With the huge influence from the large-scale competition, Central Continent was facing a surge of popularity and refinement among all the people. The news of the 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent collaborating to ambush Song Zixing and failing had yet to be spread. Knowledge of this was limited to immortal level higher-ups. The 10 great ancient sects had lost much face. There was still no news about Song Zixing, making it appear to be a joke to other sects or lone cultivator immortals. Many immortals moved one after another, searching for any traces left behind by Song Zixing in Truyang Mountain Range. But how could they find anything? In Fang Yuan's previous life, Central Continent's 10 great ancient sects searched for over 100 years to maintain their reputation, but were still not able to find him. Song Zixing's hiding ability was simply divine. Even Fang Yuan could not match him in this. Thus, Fang Yuan had no thoughts of chasing after Song Zixing from the very beginning. Finally, the agreed-upon date arrived, the day of the duel between Fang Yuan and Feng Jinhuang. Although it was not a competition, it attracted quite a large audience. Feng Jinhuang, you want a duel, but first let me see the wager. If the wager is too low, this duel will not begin. Fang Yuan spoke in full view of everyone, whether they dueled or not. What Fang Yuan wanted was only to be in the top 6 places for the infallible inheritance. Moreover, losing in the duel would not eliminate either side or influence their rankings. Feng Jinhuang had already made preparations, secretly transmitting her voice. My wager will definitely interest you deeply. Fang Yuan, you are an immortal zombie and certainly know the pain of immortal zombies. What I have with me is a method which can let you revive. Chapter 853. Dueling Feng Jinhuang, 1/4. A revival method? Fang Yuan's eyes narrowed. A clear change appeared in his expression. Spirit Affinity House was truly worthy of being one of the 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent. Its foundation was deep beyond imagination. Fang Yuan had painstakingly searched for a way to get rid of his immortal zombie status and revive, and Spirit Affinity House actually had a way to at this moment. When Feng Jinhuang placed this method as the wager, it directly touched upon Fang Yuan's core interests, making him unable to refuse. Fang Yuan laughed, restraining his agitated mood as he looked at Feng Jinhuang. Tell me, this method would not be Immortal Crane Sect's possession technique, right? Of course not. Feng Jinhuang smiled indifferently. I am indeed interested in your wager. But this wager is still far from matching my immortal blessed land. The value of all things vary. Fang Yuan, if you were given the choice of either immortal blessed land or revival, which would you choose? Of course it would be reviving. Fang Yuan chose with no hesitation inwardly, while also speaking with no hesitation. Of course it would be immortal blessed land. This is my biggest foundation. Even though I have become an immortal zombie, I can maintain a good living by relying on it. Feng Jinhuang's lips twitched as she shook her head, softening her tone. Fang Yuan, you are not likely to be such a short-sighted person. But I know you won't put immortal blessed land as your wager, and I also cannot forcibly demand you to do so. Let's talk about something more practical. If I lose, I will tell you the method of revival. You can rest assured that this method already has a successful precedent. But if you lose, we can undergo transactions. Fang Yuan looked at Feng Jinhuang's slight smile and confident appearance. He narrowed his eyes and asked, What transactions? Feng Jinhuang replied, If you lose, you need to make a deal with Spirit Affinity House to supply guts goo for the long term. The price can be discussed as long as it doesn't overstep the limit. but you must deliver them in time and in adequate quantity. If you lack souls, Spirit Affinity House will sell them to you, and the price will even be 30% lower than the market price. These transactions must take precedence, even over those of Immortal Crane's sect. No matter how many Gutsgu you have, you must first supply them to Spirit Affinity House before selling to other places. Hearing this, Fang Yuan could not help but look at Feng Jinhuang in a different light again. Having a completely new opinion in regards to this young girl in front of him, he had not expected her to mature to this degree in just this period of time. As expected of a genius Thinno, rather than that. It should be said that she has capable people behind her and was educated well. Feng Jinhuang's demand, as far as Fang Yuan was concerned, was truly lenient and could even be said to be too generous. But Guts Gu, to Feng Jinhuang, was an urgent need. The reason? Feng Jinhuang could explore dream realms with Dream Wing's Immortal Gu. Even with the help of the Immortal Gu, her soul would still feel weakened and could be injured. Guts Gu was among the highest quality soul strengthening method in the whole world. Even Spectral Soul Demon Venerable had praised it. Feng Jinhuang had originally challenged Fang Yuan out of juvenile temperament. It was an action taken in a fit of anger, but right now, the discussion about wagers with Fang Yuan was based on the present situation. It was practical and also concerned benefits. This was a mature action that if Feng Jinhuang had asked Fang Yuan to put Hu Immortal Blessed Land or Dang Hun Mountain as the wager, Fang Yuan definitely would not agree. And although Fang Yuan was using Immortal Crane Sect's name, the relation between him and Immortal Crane Sect was well known by all the 10 great ancient sections. Fang Yuan absolutely had no qualms in regards to Immortal Crane Sect's reputation and would definitely agree to Feng Jinhuang's duel with this. Thus, Feng Jinhuang made this request. To Fang Yuan, selling Guts Gu to Spirit Affinity House naturally had its benefits. The first benefit was he could increase the sales volume, earning much more Immortal Essence Stones. Who would not like having more Immortal Essence Stones? The second benefit was that Fang Yuan would have a connection to Spirit Affinity House. If one day he fell out with Immortal Crane Sect, he would have an alternative path. In fact, Fang Yuan's original intention in accepting Feng Jinhuang's challenge had been to cooperate with Spirit Affinity House. As Feng Jinhuang explored the dream realm multiple times, she realized the value of Guts Gu and wanted to obtain some of the benefits from Immortal Crane Sect. And Fang Yuan was also willing to do this. If he truly reached a deal with Spirit Affinity House, it would also be extremely helpful to him in managing his relationship with Immortal Crane Sect. Regardless of victory or loss, this duel is beneficial to me. Anyway, the result of the duel has nothing to do with the competition. Something is wrong. Her request is also to lower my will to fight. Fang Yuan suddenly had a realization and understood another layer of intention behind this move from Feng Jinhuang. Let's start then. The final winner of this contest will be me. Fang Yuan's eyes shined brightly as he laughed heartily. Feng Jinhuang's gaze flashed. That is not for certain. The wagers were set. Both sides began to discuss of the contents of this duel. Feng Jinhuang suggested refining River Wave Trace Gu as the task. River Wave Trace Gu was a rank 5 Water Path Gu worm, and formed a series with rank 3 Water Trace Gu, rank 4 Wave Trace Gu, and rank 6 Worldly Wave Trace Immortal Gu. Fang Yuan immediately refused. Spirit Affinity House specialized in cultivating and using Water Path Gu worms. This could be seen from the Immortal Gu House, Water Pavilion, that if the task was set to refine River Wave Trace Gu, Feng Jinhuang's advantage would be too big. Fang Yuan suggested refining Blood Steps Gu. This was a rank 3 Blood Path Movement type Gu worm. Feng Jinhuang also refused outright. What a joke! Who did not know Fang Yuan was proficient in Blood Path refinement techniques, and Feng Jinhuang did not have confidence in refining Blood Path Gu. The two discussed for a while before finally settling on a rank 5 Fire Path Gu worm, 5 Orifices Fire Pagoda Gu, and it would be done in a martial duel. The duel would not be private, but be a completely open contest like the Refinement Path Convention. Soon, similar materials appeared in front of the two sides. To maintain fairness, both sides were provided with the same Gu recipe. The winner would be the side that could successfully refine 5 Orifices Fire Pagoda Gu first. Unlike the previous contests, because it was in the martial duel format, whenever they reached a specific stage, Both refiners would have a chance to attack each other once. Under everyone's gaze, Fang Yuan and Feng Huang sat opposite each other, each occupying an end of the stage with a gap of around 260 steps. Between them, the duel began. Fang Yuan immediately inspected the refinement materials that he needed to have a complete understanding of every material. If some materials were defective, it would greatly influence the goo refinement. Fang Yuan checked very carefully. Sometimes the task organizers would intentionally supply some defective materials and even tamper with them so the defects are hidden, causing the goo master to not be able to easily detect them. That if they were truly deceived, it would cause quite a problem when refining the goo. This arrangement had practical significance. Usually, when refining goo masters would not always be able to gather perfect refinement materials. Sometimes, there would be some damage because the materials might have been stored for too long, or perhaps damaged when being transported or seized in battles. Or there might be substandard refinement materials sold in the market, which would have to be distinguished by the goo master themselves. Thus, inspecting goo refinement materials was a part of refinement path attainment. In this duel of refining 5 orifices fire pagoda goo, the convention supplied as many as 1,000 types of materials. There was not a single goo worm. They were all grass, flowers, stones, bones, and so on. Fang Yuan inspected all the materials, using an entire hour. Afterwards, he inspected the goo recipe provided by the convention. There were altogether 5 goo recipes. Rank 1, single aperture charcoal goo. Rank 2, double orifice stove goo. Rank 3, 3 orifices fire hut goo. Rank 4, 4 orifices fire tower goo. As well as rank 5, 5 orifices fire pagoda goo. These 5 goo worms were a series, sharing the same origin. The first step in refining 5 orifices fire pagoda goo was to refine large numbers of rank 1 single orifice charcoal goo. Then, using the single orifice charcoal goo as the main materials to refine double orifice stove goo. From rank 1 to rank 2, rank 2 to rank 3, rank 3 to rank 4, and then from rank 4 to rank 5. Finally, refining 5 orifices fire pagoda gu.it was because there were many steps and the process was cumbersome. Both sides were provided with 1,000 types of goo refinement materials. With Fang Yuan's wisdom path methods, he could modify the goo recipe and cut down on some steps of the goo refinement process. He could even directly refine 5 orifices fire pagoda goo with the materials provided. However, after some thought, Fang Yuan gave up on the idea and decided to move step by step. There were many reasons. First, he was unable to rely on wisdom goo here. Second, modifying goo recipes took a lot of time, and there would only be more losses than gains. Moreover, this was a martial duel. Both sides could attack 5 times in total to disturb the goo refinement. If a goo recipe to refine it directly was used, once the process was disturbed, the previous efforts would be wasted. It was more stable to move step by step. While Fang Yuan was inspecting the goo refinement materials, Feng Huang was checking the goo recipes. While Fang Yuan was inspecting the goo recipes, Feng Huang meticulously checked the refinement materials. The order was different, but when they started the goo refinement, it was almost at the same time. They have finally begun. They used up over an hour to inspect the materials and the goo recipes. They are really patient. This contest concerns the face of Immortal Crane Sect and Spirit Affinity House. It is a battle of reputation of 2 of the ancient sects. The spectators started talking. Some were in favor of Feng Huang, while some thought highly of Fang Yuan. There were also 2 factions that had formed in the audience. The numerically greater disciples of Spirit Affinity House were in a mutual showdown of glaring with Immortal Crane Sect's disciples. The elders leading Immortal Crane Sect's group had ugly expressions. Fang Yuan had placed Guts Goo as the wager without reporting to the higher-ups of Immortal Crane Sect, and they were not feeling good about this. At first, Fang Yuan and Feng Huang's refinement techniques were the same. During this process, Fang Yuan used his skilled refinement techniques to gradually surpass Feng Huang, progressing faster and slowly obtaining a slight lead. After all, Fang Yuan had the practical experience of his previous life, while even though Feng Huang used Immortal Goo to explore the dream realm and improve her refinement path attainment quickly, she still lacked tempering in putting them to practice to catch up to Fang Yuan. Feng Huang used a refinement path killer move, double action, Her hands trembled, and the lump of fire she was maintaining suddenly split into two, forming two fire lumps. Refinement path killer move, small wishful hand. Two small and compact hands flew out of Feng Jinhuang's mind, completely formed from will, emitting a jade luster. Feng Jinhuang's two hands constantly regulated and controlled the intensity and the temperature of the two fire lumps, while the two small wishful hands grabbed materials and threw them into the fire. Wonderful. Using two killer moves consecutively. Feng Jinhuang is well prepared. Now her speed is much faster than that of Fang Yuan. Clamorous discussions were being exchanged between the spectators. Chapter 854. Dueling Feng Jinhuang, 2/4. Using two immortal killer moves consecutively. Under the mask, Fang Yuan's gaze was sharp as a knife, but he immediately turned his gaze towards the fire in his hands. Phew, that was close. Outside the stage, a female disciple of Spirit Affinity House breathed out a sigh of relief. Senior Sister Qin Wan. What was close? I clearly saw first Senior Sister Jin Huang use two refinement path killer moves in a row, catching up immediately. Another female disciple of Spirit Affinity House was sitting beside Qin Wan. She had a chubby face. Her name was Sun Yao, and she asked this curiously. Junior Sister Sun Yao, you need to understand that this duel is different from what we've seen before. This is a martial duel. In martial duels, the refiners can attack to disturb the other side's refinement. Qin Wan explained patiently. They can do that? It is already so hard for me to refine Gu normally, but if I were to be disturbed on top of that. Heavens, Sun Yao pursed her lips, revealing an expression showing that she did not even dare to imagine such a thing. This martial duel format is clearly meant to make one suffer. Whoever thought of this is really strict. No Qin Wan, however, had an expression of approval. Being able to resist disturbances is one of the most important aspects of refinement path. In our cultivation journeys, perhaps one day we would suffer a sneak attack when we are refining Gu. In fact, many times when we leave the sect to complete the sect missions outside, because of all sorts of damage that may occur to Gu worms, we often have to refine new Gu in the wild. Using the same logic, when we are facing a strong enemy and discover the enemy refining Gu, we would also choose to sneak attack and take the enemy by surprise, turning the situation in battle in our favor. This is the practical significance of the martial duel format. Junior Sister Sun Yao, you also know Gu masters have to use all their concentration during the refinement process, because slight carelessness can result in failure and backlash. But, when you refine Gu outside, you also need to pay some attention to your surroundings. First Senior Sister Jin Huang used two refinement path killer moves in a row just earlier. That was a risky move. Because the moment she activated the killer move, the entirety of her attention was naturally focused on the Gu worms forming the killer move. If it were an ordinary Gu master, they might have already lost control over the flames and failed in Gu refinement if they had to divert their attention in activating the killer move. If at this moment, Fang Yuan, that demon, had attacked first Senior Sister Jin Huang, it might have caused significant trouble to her. Hearing Qin Wan's explanation, Sun Yao came to a realization. So it was like that. Then that truly was dangerous. Fortunately, that demon Fang Yuan did not attack. Because Fang Yuan had, time and time again, used blood path refinement techniques at crucial moments, disciples of Spirit Affinity House who disliked him privately called him a demon. However, there were, in fact, many demons in the 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent. For instance, the third supreme elder of Immortal Crane sect, Lord Tiger Demon, was a demonic path Gu immortal in his early years before he was recruited by Immortal Crane sect. The sect that exhibited this the most was actually Spirit Affinity House itself. The late Sword Immortal Bo Qing was a person of the demonic path with an extremely murderous nature, but was reformed through love with Spirit Affinity House's Fairy Mo Yao. In the end, Bo Qing was recruited into Spirit Affinity House. At present, the story of Fairy by Qing and Feng Jiugu was widely spread, and Feng Jiugu was formerly of the demonic path as well. Central Continent was so large and was famous for producing outstanding champions. Once in a while, there would be some astonishing demonic cultivators and lone cultivators that would shake the world to maintain control of the overall situation and to protect their interests. The 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent would recruit these people. It was the best method to effectively retain their authority. He did not attack? That's a pity. Feng Huang inwardly sighed. Out of the 2 lumps of fire burning in front of her, one suddenly extinguished. What's going on? People in the audience involuntarily exclaimed. Don't tell me that demon, Fang Yuan, had already attacked and disturbed First Senior Sister, causing half the Gu refinement to fail? This demon is too cunning. What attack did he use? We did not even see it. Sun Yao anxiously cried out, her tone filled with loathing towards Fang Yuan. No, that's not right. The elder hosting this duel did not say anything. This means that demon, Fang Yuan, did not attack. So it was like that. Qin Wan's eyes brightened as she suddenly came to a realization. Originally, First Senior Sister had put up a facade of using 2 killer moves. It was a trap meant to entice Fang Yuan to attack her. If Fang Yuan attacked, his mind would be focused on his attack at that instant, which would expose a weak point. First Senior Sister would then have a higher chance of successfully counterattacking. My goodness, was that actually the case? Sun Yao's small, chubby mouth opened wide in shock at the battle of wits behind this contest. Qin Wan had a serious expression. I was also deceived just now. The truth of the matter is First Senior Sister set up a trap, but that demon Fang Yuan saw through it and was not fooled. Junior Sister Sun Yao, watch closely. This contest is going to be extremely splendid. The contest between these two is absolutely the best of this generation. Okay, Sun Yao nodded, her eyes staring at the stage without blinking. The 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent had always fiercely competed. Not only did their Gu immortals compete, the disciples also had a similar type of competition. There was no doubt that Feng Huang was the best of this generation within the 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent. However, in the contest for who immortal blessed land, Fang Yuan suddenly appeared and kicked Feng Huang down the mountain. As for the events behind the scenes, they were not explained to disciples like Sun Yao and Qin Wan. And even immortal Crane sect's own disciples and most of their elders thought Fang Yuan was a genius disciple, secretly nurtured by the sect. In the previous round, Feng Huang was defeated, and this duel, in which Feng Huang wanted to reclaim her prestige, involved a contest between the best disciples of the 10 great ancient sections. It was a hidden clash between Spirit Affinity House and Immortal Crane sect. Thus, almost all of the audience was asking a question. Who was the best Gu master among the younger generation? What they did not know was, Fang Yuan had already become a Gu immortal. Although he was only an immortal zombie, he was already someone they could no longer decipher. Meanwhile, Feng Huang possessed Dream Wing's immortal Gu, and had already activated it, gaining enormous benefits. Bystanders could only see such surface details, but both competitors did not see much importance in the reputation aspect. Feng Huang had already matured a lot and realized what benefits meant, while Fang Yuan was way beyond her maturity. The competition continued. Fang Yuan had seen through Feng Huang's trap, but between Feng Huang's 2 killer moves, small wishful hand was real. It was unlike double action that had only been a facade. With the help of the 2 small hands made of will, Feng Huang's refinement speed was slightly above that of Fang Yuan. And as time passed, the gap between the two gradually increased. However, this gap was not obvious. Fang Yuan maintained his rhythm, and using solely Gu refinement techniques without any killer moves, he maintained the fire and was now almost finished processing the materials. He used Gu refinement techniques and not refinement path killer moves. Techniques were the summation of purely skills and experience. They were the foundation of Gu refinement. Very skilled. Even though he is the enemy, I cannot help but admit this demon, Fang Yuan, has a very solid foundation in Gu refinement. Even some elders from our sect do not have as solid of a foundation as him. Qin Wan suddenly sighed, after having watched fixedly for a long while. He has a grasp of so many Gu refinement techniques. He has used at least 30 types by now. But I feel our first senior sister is still the more amazing one. She fell back a little at the start, but quickly caught up later. Now, no matter how that demon Fang Yuan pursues, he won't be able to catch up. This small wishful hand killer move is truly convenient, Sun Yao said, admiringly. No, Qin Wan shook her head. First Senior Sister's lead might not necessarily be a good thing. Maintaining a killer move requires primeval essence and also is taxing upon the mind. On the contrary, that demon Fang Yuan has only been using basic Gu refinement techniques, which do not have as much of a burden on the mind. As this continues over time, his mind will be less taxed than First Senior Sister's, which will be of great help in the later stages of Gu refinement. It is like this. Then, isn't First Senior Sister in danger? Senior Sister Qin Wan, you are saying First Senior Sister gained a lead from using a refinement path killer move, but is instead in a disadvantage? Although your words sound reasonable, how could it be like that? Sun Yao felt a headache. Junior Sister Sun Yao, this is the brilliance of the refinement path convention. You have just begun your cultivation journey and have yet to come in contact with many things. You will slowly understand them in future. Qin Wan smiled, but she was feeling heavy internally. This demon, Fang Yuan, is too skilled. He is keeping pace with First Senior Sister just by repeatedly using Gu refinement techniques. Even though First Senior Sister used a refinement path killer move, she is not able to create a large lead. It can't go on like this. Feng Jinhuang was feeling some mental exhaustion. It had not been long since the competition began, and both sides were still at the stage of refining rank 1 single orifice charcoal Gu. According to logic, Feng Jinhuang should still have plentiful mental energy and not be in a state of exhaustion. However, estimates was one thing. The actual competition could be completely different. Feng Jinhuang could disregard the gazes from outside the stage. Her talents were outstanding, and with Gu immortals as parents, she had been the center of attention since she was young. She was already used to it. The pressure on Feng Jinhuang mainly came from Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan displayed an incomparably solid foundation and was relying on just Gu refinement techniques to maintain pace with Feng Jinhuang. While even though she had used a refinement path killer move, she was not able to surpass him greatly in progress. Fang Yuan's extraordinary performance and formidable achievements made the world overrate his attainment level. Feng Jinhuang had already been feeling pressure before the duel. After the duel started, Fang Yuan was in pursuit with a stable speed, which further increased the pressure on Feng Jinhuang. This pressure was greatly wearing down on Feng Jinhuang's mind. She was slowly starting to feel exhausted and uneasy internally. It seems my refinement path quasi-grandmaster attainment cannot match Fang Yuan's refinement path attainment. What should I do? Feng Jinhuang began to think and plan quickly while refining the Gu. I have used a refinement path killer move. My mind is also being worn down rapidly. The duel has only just begun, and as time goes on, Fang Yuan's advantage will become even more clear. But if I stop using the killer move and compete with just Gu refinement techniques, I still cannot match Fang Yuan. My greatest advantage is the large numbers of refinement path killer moves that I carefully prepared. Chapter 855, Dueling Feng Jinhuang, 3/4. The duel stipulated they could only use the materials provided by the convention. Although they could launch attacks and use refinement path killer moves, any methods affecting the soul or mind, like refreshing the mind or strengthening the soul, were completely prohibited. Feng Jinhuang was the one who set this rule. It was to prevent Fang Yuan from using Guts Gu to strengthen his soul during the duel. The soul and mind were closely connected. Feng Jinhuang made this move to limit Fang Yuan's advantage in this aspect, but she had not expected she would be the first to suffer a drawback from this rule. Whoosh! Suddenly, Feng Jinhuang flicked her pinky finger, shooting out a speck of golden light. The golden light was extremely fast, reaching Fang Yuan in the blink of an eye, targeting the refinement flames in Fang Yuan's hands. If the golden light hit the fire, even with Fang Yuan's ability, the refinement would fail. He would have to bear the backlash and start over. However, how could a person as cautious as Fang Yuan not pay attention to the defense of such an important area? Ding! A crisp sound echoed. The golden light was 3 inches from the fire when it clashed into a formless barrier and was blocked. Fang Yuan's gaze was calm. The fire in his hands was not affected in the slightest. Feng Jinhuang's attack was blocked by Fang Yuan without batting an eyelid. Only after this attack had been defended did the Gu masters outside the stage react. Spirit Affinity House's Feng Jinhuang was the first to initiate an attack, but the attack was blocked by Immortal Crane Sect's Fang Yuan. What was that attack just now? It was so fast. Feng Huang made an error in her choice. How could Fang Yuan not defend such an important area? It might have been better to attack Fang Yuan directly instead and injure him. Look, Feng Huang is using a refinement path killer move again. There was a clamor outside the stage, but in the stage, the scene was quiet, isolated from all the sounds outside, attacking the enemy's vital points, then using this moment of relative safety to use another refinement path killer move. Fang Yuan glanced at Feng Huang, coldly smiling inwardly. It seems you are using all your strength. Worthy of being Feng Huang. Even in your youth, you are deeply aware of your own strengths and weaknesses. I have to say this is a sensible choice. Fang Yuan praised her in his mind, but he continued to be unmoved, still refining Gu in the same way as before. Feng Huang used up a precious chance to make a move to attack Fang Yuan's refinement flames, and also took this opportunity to use a second refinement path killer move. With the help of 2 killer moves, her refinement speed increased sharply, and gradually Fang Yuan was thrown behind. Without the pressure from Fang Yuan, Feng Huang immediately felt slightly relaxed, a layer of tension inside her loosened, and her refinement speed further increased a little. In this duel, Fang Yuan and Feng Huang each had 5 chances to attack, because it was only a duel, not a life and death battle. The power they could use every time they attacked was limited to a certain level. The first time, they were only allowed to use rank 1 Gu. The second time, they could use rank 2 Gu, and so on, until the 5th time, where they could use rank 5 Gu. It was the same with defense. They could only use Gu worms of corresponding rank. This was another limitation to Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan was an immortal zombie after all, with an immortal killer move. If she was attacked by Giant Hand, it would be difficult for Feng Huang to resist it. Of course, Feng Huang had Gu immortal parents, so she would naturally have immortal essence in her body along with immortal Gu and the will or emotion of Gu immortals. There was not a high likelihood of Fang Yuan truly killing her. This time, she is using 2 refinement path killer moves at once to gain a lead. Outside the stage, Sun Yao excitedly shouted. Yes, it is a pity she used one of the 5 chances to attack. But this is also a classic tactic. We still have to see the result of the refinement to determine the outcome. Qinwan pondered as she gazed at the stage. Time continued to pass. Fang Yuan fell further and further behind Feng Huang. But the strange part was that he was not the least bit hurried, seemingly having no intention to overtake Feng Huang. Fang Yuan was still using Gu refinement techniques, refining single orifice charcoal Gu step by step, while Feng Huang had already begun refining the rank 2 double orifice stove Gu. Soon, praises and sighs could be heard outside the stage. Feng Huang had used a 3rd refinement path killer move, increasing her speed once again. A hour later, Feng Huang attacked Fang Yuan and took the chance when Fang Yuan defended. She used a 4th refinement path killer move. 4 killer moves were used together. There were 6 lumps of fire floating in front of Feng Huang. Each lump was accompanied by a small, wishful hand that constantly grabbed materials and threw them into the fire. With the help of the small, wishful hands, the exact amount of the Gu refinement materials thrown into the flames was extremely precise. From the help of 4 killer moves, Feng Huang's refinement speed had long since surpassed that of Fang Yuan, and soon she started on 3 orifices fire hot Gu, while Fang Yuan had just now begun refining double orifice stove Gu. Looking at Feng Huang advancing triumphantly, throwing Fang Yuan far behind, many were having doubts. What was Fang Yuan playing at? Sun Yao grinned. First senior sister's victory is guaranteed. Qinwan was also a refinement path genius whom Spirit Affinity House paid great attention to. It was just that she had yet to mature. She was also in support of Sun Yao's words. If the situation continues like this, first senior sister has a high chance of victory. With my ability, my maximum limit is maintaining 5 refinement path killer moves. But this is the martial duel format. I must leave some energy behind to deal with Fang Yuan's attacks. Of the 5 chances to attack, I have already used 2, while Fang Yuan has only been defending. Could it be my conditions were too alluring that he is forfeiting? Feng Huang could not understand Fang Yuan's behavior and felt some doubts for a moment. 15 minutes passed. Feng Huang had made good progress in refining 3 orifices fire hot Gu. She was past the halfway mark. Right now, Feng Jinhuang's dominance was extremely obvious, leading Fang Yuan by a huge distance. It is time to attack. Fang Yuan's gaze was clear, and as he sensed that the time was ripe, he sent out a goo worm from his immortal aperture. I am attacking. He suddenly spoke softly. Feng Jinhuang's attention was immediately attracted. Her bright and beautiful eyes gazed at Fang Yuan, while continuing with her goo refinement. Finally attacking. But what is the reason for warning me beforehand? Feng Jinhuang was extremely cautious. Fang Yuan chuckled. Feng Jinhuang, be careful. This goo is the rank 1 ghost fire goo. Feng Jinhuang narrowed her eyes. A vigilant look flashed past her eyes as she began to think rapidly. It is certain to be rank 1 goo. This is Fang Yuan's first attack, so he can only use rank 1 methods. But it might not necessarily be ghost fire goo. Maybe he showed that goo to mislead me? After all, a goo worm's external appearance can be disguised. I need to be extremely careful. While she was thinking, Fang Yuan activated the goo worm in his hand. The moment this goo activated, it transformed into a small lump of eerie ghost fire, which then slowly moved towards Feng Jinhuang. It is really ghost fire goo? Feng Jinhuang was slightly stunned. Right at this time, the ghost fire goo suddenly sped up and shot towards Feng Jinhuang. Come. Just a mere rank 1 ghost fire goo. Feng Jinhuang's eyes shined sharply with confidence. She had already prepared sufficiently and could easily block a rank 1 ghost fire goo. When the ghost fire goo charged over, she even had the time to think of the possibility of Fang Yuan making continuous attacks. However, the ghost fire suddenly came to a halt, stopping near Feng Jinhuang. Afterwards, the ghost fire slowly circled Feng Jinhuang, swaying around either side of her. What? Feng Jinhuang was startled internally. Fang Yuan, what is the meaning of this? The next moment, her expression sank as realization dawned upon her. In this duel, the goo master could only defend in the range of a meter. The ghost fire goo did not encroach the range of a meter around Feng Jinhuang, making her unable to defend. The ghost fire floating around could only be considered as part of the process of Fang Yuan's attack. He is using rank 1 ghost fire to pressure me, to divert my attention. Feng Jinhuang was astute and was soon able to understand the intent behind this move. So sinister. Many people, outside the stage, exclaimed as they realized his plan. Sun Yao was filled with righteous indignation. That demon Fang Yuan is using a loophole in the rules. With a ghost fire floating in front of you, who can concentrate on refining goo? Does nobody care about this? He is too shameless. Qin Wan shook her head, saying solemnly. The rules of the duel were set by both sides. This pending offensive is also a classic battle tactic in the martial duel format. It can't be considered shameless. Damn it. Cold sweat began to seep out of Feng Jinhuang's forehead. Ghost fires can injure the soul. I have used up a lot of my mental energy. If I am really affected by it, I will definitely slip up. But if I just blindly defend, my mind will be tied down in observing the movement of the ghost fire, and my goo refinement speed will decrease. There was still a way. Feng Jinhuang could initiate an attack and destroy this ghost fire. But this was not worthwhile, because this would be her third attack, which meant a rank 3 method. Using a rank 3 method to cancel Fang Yuan's rank 1 ghost fire goo, no matter what, it would be her loss. Maybe this is his intention. He wants to lure me into using up a precious chance of attacking. Feng Jinhuang gritted her teeth as she looked at Fang Yuan. Controlling a ghost fire also expended one's mental energy. But Fang Yuan had only been using goo refinement techniques and not refinement path killer moves. It could be said his mental energy was at full capacity. It was more than sufficient to control a ghost fire. Oh, not destroying my ghost fire? You are really patient. Fang Yuan suddenly laughed. Then, how about another ghost fire? Under everyone's gazes, Fang Yuan took out a second ghost fire goo. Feng Jinhuang, look closely. This is rank 2 ghost fire goo. Fang Yuan calmly spoke. Unlike Feng Jinhuang's sneak attacks, he openly announced his methods. The style of Fang Yuan's attacks was the completely opposite of Feng Jinhuang. Feng Jinhuang's 2 attacks were quick, accurate, and relentless, attacking the enemy's vital points and forcing Fang Yuan into defense, while she took the chance to use refinement path killer moves. However, Fang Yuan's methods could be described with one word: slow. The second ghost fire floated slowly towards Feng Huang, stopping a meter in front of her. This ghost fire was created from rank 2 ghost fire goo. It was double the size of the first ghost fire. The two ghost fires circled around Feng Huang. The pressure on Feng Huang swiftly doubled.